What would I do differently if I was starting a new paralegal career today? That's the question I received recently from one of the paralegals in our litigation boot camp. Let's face it, it's always easy to look back and say, I should have done this instead. You know, the saying hindsight is 2020. So I was thinking, what lessons did I learn that I could pass along to others so that they don't have to wait for hindsight? Maybe it's something that gets you thinking before making an important decision. Or maybe you know a paralegal who's new to the paralegal profession and you can share this episode with. What I'd like to see in the comments is what's one thing or two that you would do differently if you were starting a new paralegal career today, given what you know now. Number one, for me, I would have invested more money and more time on my career development, especially in those first 5 years. It's one of the topics I talk about a lot on here and in the podcast. And that's why I do talk about it so much. It's especially important now as I'm looking at my end of the year numbers from the bookkeeper and the dollar number next to professional development. It's higher than it's ever been before. And I've been in business for 12 years. I think to myself, I should have done more of that earlier in my entrepreneur journey, and I could have saved myself some headaches. But when we're just starting out, whether as a new paralegal or a new entrepreneur, we're just trying to keep our heads above water, and we don't have time for that fluffy stuff when we've got all these deadlines. When I got my first paralegal job, I was still in college. They let me work 25-hour work weeks so that I could finish out my last semester. And that was one hard semester, taking evening classes and working during the day, even if the day was a little shorter than your typical work day. By the time I finished with school, I was sick of learning. Well, not really sick of learning. I was just plain tired of running from home to change and grab a bite to eat and drive to class that didn't end until 9 p.m. It was rough. So when I graduated, I said, I need a break. I need a normal schedule. The problem is that break lasted for a few years. I told myself if I didn't have time to attend that conference or that paralegal association event, I was just too busy. I placed everything above my career development. Now, I will say that it wasn't as easy back then as it is now. There was no such thing as Google or YouTube. Back then, and really mostly through much of the 90s, the only way to take a class or a course was at your local college or when there was a paralegal conference that would come into town, maybe once a year if you were lucky. And what do you suppose the likelihood was that that one day that the conference was in town also coincided with a slow work day when you could actually attend it? Yeah. I'd also add to that, once I did start taking it more seriously, I should have included attending events that were outside my specific skill set. For example, I was a litigation paralegal who started out doing securities litigation. I could have easily found a local college class on securities, I think. I guess I don't know because I never even looked. The same with when I was doing, when I went over to doing antitrust, from antitrust to construction litigation. It was at the same firm, so you rely on the attorneys to school you on just the important aspects of what you need to know to do your job. But what about doing your job at the next level? Here's a perfect example of that. If you've watched some of these videos or listened to some of my other episodes, you may remember the story of the construction litigation paralegal who went from in-house paralegal to the executive vice president of the company. She did that because throughout her time as a construction litigation paralegal, she took classes on project management, construction project management, construction budgeting, things like that. Instead of just paralegal focused, she was construction focused. Part of that was because she had a career plan. She wanted to move out of the traditional paralegal role. I'm sure if you've been a listener or watcher for a while, you already have a copy of the Paralegal Bootcamp's career development plan, but if you don't, I'll put it down below in the description. Number two, I wouldn't have asked the other paralegals how much money they make. Well, I don't know if I actually came right out and asked them, but at some point they told me, whether it was during a lunch or some other conversation. I don't really remember the exact circumstances because it was almost 30 years ago. I don't even remember when it was. But I remember how it made me feel and what it made me do. It made me dislike my job because I had the attitude that I was being underpaid. It made me want to leave the firm. And this was a job I otherwise loved. Now, keep in mind that this was very early in my career, and being that young, I didn't take the time to think about how they had more experience than me. They'd been at the firm longer than me. There were all kinds of reasons why those paralegals were being paid more than me. But in my 20-something mind, none of that mattered. Here's why I want to bring this up, because I see this on social media all the time. Someone posts that they've got X years of experience and they're working at a small firm in Florida, and they want to know if X is a low salary because they feel like they're being underpaid. But they're happy with the attorney and the firm. It's all relative. There could be another paralegal in that same small town, maybe even working in a law firm right down the street, who makes $10,000 to $20,000 more per year, but they're working in high-dollar complex litigation, and you're working in insurance defense, and the firm's clients limit how much the attorney can bill for your time. They're a business. That law firm has to make a decision on what they can afford to pay you by factoring in what they can bill out your time as, at least on an hourly basis. Or maybe on that same street, in that same town, there's a paralegal working on the plaintiff side of personal injury, and she's making around the same salary as you, the one that you feel is low, and now that makes you feel better because others are being paid the same. But what you don't realize is that the other person doesn't have nearly the benefit package that you do. And you might be in for a big year-end bonus or even a mid-year bonus. That's why I say don't ask others if your salary is fair. Ask yourself. If you're new to the field, is it something you can live with for a couple of years? Because it will definitely start to increase after year 2. But here's the thing. Do not accept a job offer for a salary that you know is not enough to live on, hoping that you're going to be able to get a huge raise in 6 months. If you get a job offer for $35,000 and you know that to pay your rent or mortgage and all the utilities and daycare and all of those things, in order to just get by, if you accept that job offer, you're going to have to get a second or third job just to make ends meet. Then tell the employer that when they make the offer. If you really want the job and you're willing to sacrifice to take it, then just say, at that salary, it's going to require me to drive for Uber on nights and weekends to make up the difference in what I need, which I'm willing to do if I have to. But I just want to make sure you're okay with me working a side job to make up the difference. Or don't accept the job. But don't accept the job and just stew over this low salary and hope that someone gets the hint eventually. All right, number 3. I would have stayed at a small to mid-sized firm instead of moving to big law. You might be thinking, what? That's why you are where you are, because you had the opportunity to take that management position at big law. No, I am where I am today because it's where I was meant to be. Now, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed every minute of my paralegal career. We're talking about before I moved into management. I'd gone from a litigation paralegal at a 20 attorney firm to a litigation paralegal at a 1,500 attorney firm. But the whole reason I was successful was because of the experience I got at the small firm. I had more trials and drafted more motions for summary judgment in my first few years that most paralegals get to do in their entire career at a big firm. The other reason I would do that differently is now, after all those years of being exposed to big law firms, that was my only exposure. Because here's the thing, when you work on the defense side at a Goliath law firm and work only with lawyers at other Goliath law firms, it's almost like you're living inside a bubble. Do you know why I wanted to list that as a thing that I would do differently? Because over the past 12 years of being in business, I've been exposed to and done work for those small to mid-sized firms. And there are some tremendous firms that I'm working with and they're doing great things for their employees. Every single week, I'm interacting with these firms and see what some of them are doing for their paralegals. I literally say to myself, if I was still a paralegal, I would love to work at a firm like that. In fact, I'm going to put together an episode, a podcast episode and a video, to come out sometime 2023 on the pros and cons of working at big firms and small firms, because I get that question so often. I think it would be good to get both perspectives and from different people. Well, hopefully this episode, this video gave you some insight if you're a new paralegal just starting out, or if you've been in the field for a while. It got you thinking what you'd do differently. Share it in the comments below, or share it with that new paralegal in the office. You could make that person's day by sharing your insight and perspective with them.